we were called for a foul. We were over the limit. So their big star, poor old Nanchito, had 2 shots. And he could have won the game. He missed. Now, this is, what we haven't talked about yet is the Hartzell crowd.
Yes, please tell us about the crowd.
Because, I mean, Hartzell crowds were educated crowds. These were guys that knew basketball. You know, you played anywhere else in the country. I don't care whether it was club or school or whatever. The thing that they loved to see was a guy dunking.
Yes.
Hartzell crowd, it was the sweet pass. You know, somebody just making that perfect pass up to the other. That's what impressed. And great defense. They admired it and they shouted for it. But these guys also knew how to really make a lot of noise. We would score a basket and then you'd see all the kids hollering and shouting and making it so that the opposing team couldn't communicate easily to get the ball in.
Right.
And they were making so much noise so that then, because they couldn't get it in, we'd steal the ball again and score again. Yeah, it was that kind of thing. So yeah, they did their thing with poor old Nanchito, tried to score his 2 shots and they were, you know, and he missed both of them. And we had again won the provincial championship there. It was, yeah, that was a game. It was the first game, the only game I think I can ever remember where I actually had the crowd carrying me off the court.
I remember I was there. I was a junior, but I remember that game. It's the most memorable game I've ever seen at Hartzell, ever. Yeah, you know.
I agree. For me, it's also the most memorable. Where, yeah, it was amazing.
And it seems, you know, it seems around that time the team, the style of play became more guard dominated, because before then you always had the big guys.
Yeah.
But now it seemed like, you know, with Munyaradzi, Nyanhanda, Farayi, Chidzungu, the Chenji Chambaras, you know, after that I think Tendai, Chidawanyika, then I think a stream behind me, the Muganiwa twins. Seemed like the style of basketball started to just gradually change to become more guard-oriented. Is that your perspective?
Yeah, because what happened in that game was we had 2 units. And we just played super hard, full court, right from the first second right through to the end. But it would be full court press and full court man-to-man. And we had a man-to-man unit and we had a press unit.
Okay.
And the 2 of them would alternate. So I'd bring one in and send the other one out and everything. And when we would bring in that press unit, it was almost all these guards. We didn't even have big men in there at all.
Okay.
And of course it was against all these really tall guys from Boys High. So it looked like a group of midgets out on the court. But all of these kids could run and they could jump and they could play positional basketball where they knew right where they were supposed to be every second.
Okay.
And yeah, it was good fun. I'm trying to remember exactly which one it was, because I remember the big play where they had passed the ball down and we're standing on the sideline there, and right in front of us, one of our guys now who was playing the full court press, they threw the long pass. And this guy just came flying up, leaping in front of this guy much bigger than him, stole the ball, came down with it, and we went down and scored, and that was where we got a point ahead.
Wow.
And I mean, yeah, I've never, Hartzell crowds knew how to cheer, and boy, they really cheered in that one. They really let it go. In fact, what's interesting is one of the more memorable games I had was a few years after that. Marist brothers now qualified for the provincial championship. And they had gone to the nationals the year before and been beaten, even though they dominated Manica land, they were beaten at the nationals pretty badly.
Okay.
And they then Mr. Muzawazi, who was the headmaster there, came and said, look, can't you just coach these guys? We'll bring them in. And I was at Hillcrest by that time. Can't you bring them over there and just do some coaching of them now that they've qualified for the nationals?
Right.
So I said, yeah, sure, we'll do that. So we did it. The nationals were held at Hartzell. And because Hartzell was not in the competition, the whole crowd then was supporting Marist.
Right.
And it was a very interesting situation because you could hardly blame Marist for the behavior of the crowd. So what they did, what I had shown Marist how to do is to run that full court press. And they were very athletic and very good at it. They were down by 16 points in the fourth quarter of the game. And they went into that press, and I just said, now it's got to work now. This is it. It's got to happen. They stole a ball, put it in the basket. And now the trick to going against a full court press very often is get the ball in quickly before they can set up and get gone down.
Right.
Our crowd now, the Hartzell crowd, who of course were unbiased, right? Because they were just ran out on the court cheering and shouting. When they got back off the court, just a few seconds later, the Nyanga Marist defense was completely set up. Boom, they stole the ball, zoom, into the basket. Crowd comes out. I mean, the crowds at that time. I remember when I first moved to Hillcrest, our Hillcrest teams loved to go to Hartzell.
Okay.
They knew they would get beaten probably, but they loved going there because the crowds were so fantastic.
Right.
They didn't mind that the crowd was against them. Just having a crowd that was that supportive and
Right.
that energetic and everything
Right.
was just really fun to play with.
Right. Right.
So yeah.
Right.
I remember when the first time in 1994 we met Crunchy, the big kid from Hillcrest.
Yes.
For the first time. I think he was in Form 3 at that time.
Yes.
And he came over there to Hartzell to play. And I remember how the poor guy, I mean,
He was destroyed.
he just was beating up something awful, and he couldn't shoot.
Because back then he was playing against Nisbert Matondo. He was playing against Prosper Nyamande, Munyaradzi Nyanhanda. I mean, he was playing against some big guys.
But it was mainly Nisbert
Yes.
that just went on him, and he couldn't score, number one, and number two, then he kept fouling. And within 5 minutes in that game, he had fouled out.
Wow.
He was gone.
Wow.
And it just...
Gwinyai Nyamajiwa, that's not the star player there.
Yes,
I forgot.
Yes.
So I have a question about the 1993 year. This is, I think at that time, Farayi Chidzungu was in upper six. There was Farayi Chidzungu, there was Tapua Nzara, Munyaradzi Nyamande in lower six, the Nisbert Matondo. And then there was Prosper Nyamande, I think Gerald Mafunda. Then there was a guy you brought out of nowhere, Brian Chikata.
Oh, yeah.
I'd never seen him play much, and then I remember you working with him under the basket, almost doing the mic and drill, left and right. If I recall, by the end of the year, I think he was a provincial player and maybe a national team player by the end of that year. How did you discover him and bring him on? And then there was another guy, Archibald Karadzandima, who was like a stat machine. How did you discover these guys?
Okay, well, first of all, Chikata was easy to discover. He's the one who, there was a whole crowd standing there, his head was this high above everybody else's head. So, I mean, he was a very tall kid, and therefore a nice one to coach.
Yes.
And basically it was just having to teach him to just move around right at the basket. Didn't have to teach him to be able to be doing a lot of jump shots and things like that far out. Just deal with the basket and he could do his job. Now Archie was in the tradition of another kid that came later. What was his name? Gumiro. And he actually was in the tradition of our first national player, Vince Rungano. These guys all played at the small forward. And basically what they were is they were just people who didn't mind leaving some skin and some blood on the basketball court. They would dive for every ball that they could find, and they just, that's the way they did it. And yeah, it was extremely impressive that they could. They were the ones that made the difference in so many games. So many teams had some big men, they had some perimeter players, but they didn't have those people that were halfway in between. The ones who, when there would be two people fighting for the ball, this guy would be in there and take it away from both of them. Okay. And scrap it on the floor, and if that ball was on the court, he'd be diving, literally diving for it like a goalkeeper, etc. And yeah, he I think followed a tradition of basketballers at Hartzell that probably was our most valuable contribution.